Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So are you ready to dive into some really wild theories about ancient history? I mean, today we're going deep on lost civilizations and even how archaeology is interpreted in some really radical ways. And I think we're even going to touch on the cosmos a bit.
And you know what makes this deep dive so interesting to me is that we're kind of basing it all on this text called whoweare11.pdf, which is actually translated from Arabic, right?
Okay, so we're talking .pdf, like a digital text.
Exactly, yeah. It was originally written in Arabic, and it's a serious scholarly work. It's not just some fringe theory you find in the darkest corners of the internet.
Interesting. Okay, so then it's a well-researched argument for a lost civilization, and not just any lost civilization, but one that's way older even than ancient Egypt.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We're talking about a civilization that might have existed even before the pharaohs, before the pyramids.
Okay, so pre-pyramids, pre-pharaohs, I'm already hooked. I mean, what kind of evidence does this text actually offer to back up such a wild claim?
Well, okay, just picture this for a second. The Mediterranean Sea as we know it now, right? It didn't always exist.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the text says that it used to be this lush, fertile valley, a real cradle of civilization, and that's where this Osirian empire supposedly flourished.
Okay, so Osirian, that's what this lost civilization is called.
Right, and according to the text, this whole area was submerged after some kind of cataclysmic event.
Okay, so what kind of event are we talking? A massive flood or maybe an asteroid impact?
Yeah, I mean, something huge that totally reshaped the landscape and basically buried all traces of this advanced culture.
So a real-life Atlantis situation, right? Okay, so far so good. But if this all happened so long ago, how can there possibly be any evidence left? I mean, wouldn't it all be gone by now?
That's where it gets really cool. The text points to these megalithic ruins that have been found underwater.
Underwater ruins. Okay, I'm picturing crumbling temples and statues covered in seaweed.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not talking about little artifacts here. We're talking about massive, precisely cut blocks that have been found near Morocco, Spain, Malta, Crete, and some researchers believe they're way older than any known cultures in those areas.
Okay, so it's not just random rocks on the seafloor.
Right. And then there's also the sunken harbor of Alexandria with its gigantic blocks that could be from before the time of the pharaohs. And there's even a submerged city off the coast of Melos in Greece with roads leading straight into the depths.
Whoa, roads leading underwater. Okay, that's some real Indiana Jones stuff right there.
I know, right? But you bring up a good point. I mean, there are underwater ruins all over the world, right?
Exactly. So, could all of this be connected somehow? Could it point to a network of ancient civilizations that were all linked together?
Well, that's exactly what the text is suggesting. It says that these underwater ruins might not be just isolated incidents, but rather they could be echoes of a global civilization that existed before our planet was reshaped by some huge cataclysmic event.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we've got a potential lost civilization that was maybe even more advanced than we are today, and it's all hidden under the sea. It's like a giant puzzle waiting to be solved.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The text goes on to explore some even more radical ideas, it kind of throws a wrench into the traditional Darwinian timeline of human evolution.
Okay, how so?
It basically suggests that humans, or at least human-like beings, could have been around millions of years earlier than we currently think.
Millions of years earlier. But how is that even possible? I mean, doesn't all the scientific evidence point to humans evolving relatively recently?
Well, the text uses the concept of out-of-place artifacts, which are often called O-parts, as evidence to support this claim.
Okay, so O-parts, those are objects that are found in archaeological contexts, but they seem way too advanced for the technology that supposedly existed at the time.
Exactly. And the text argues that these objects suggest that human history is actually much longer and much more complex than we currently understand.
Okay, I'm really curious about these O-parts now. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. There's this coin that was supposedly found in a well in Illinois, and some believe it's millions of years old, way before humans were thought to be minting coins.
A coin from millions of years ago. That's crazy.
It is, right. And then there are metallic tubes embedded in Cretaceous chalk in France, which is over 66 million years old.
Hmm.
And get this, there's even a fossilized hammerhead that was found in Texas rock formations that are over 100 million years old.
Wait, a hammer from the time of the dinosaurs? Seriously?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, right? And there are tons of other examples like this. The text really dives deep into the world of O-parts.
So if these O-parts are authentic, and I mean, that's a big if, wouldn't that really challenge our understanding of human evolution?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It would suggest that there are huge gaps in our knowledge of technological development. I mean, could this mean there was parallel evolution happening? Or maybe lost civilizations with incredibly advanced knowledge that we've simply forgotten about? Or something even crazier that we haven't even thought of yet?
It definitely makes you rethink everything we thought we knew about the past. I mean, if we could find concrete evidence to support the existence of these O parts, it would completely rewrite history.
No doubt. And speaking of rewriting history, the text also brings up Sirius, the dog star.
Sirius, as in the brightest star in the night sky.
The very same. The text claims that it played a huge role in this ancient Osirian civilization and in other cultures throughout history.
Okay, so Sirius is more than just a bright light in the sky. What does the text say about its significance?
Well, it presents Sirius as this source of profound knowledge and spiritual practices for these ancient cultures. They saw it as more than just a celestial object.
So not just a pretty twinkle, then. What kind of evidence is there to support this idea of Sirius being so important to the ancients?
Well, there's the Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa.
Yeah.
They have this super detailed astronomical knowledge of Sirius, including the fact that it has a white dwarf companion star, Sirius B.
Wait, Sirius B, that's the star that's invisible to the naked eye, right?
Exactly. And modern science only discovered it relatively recently, but the Dogon have known about it for centuries.
How is that even possible? It's like they had some kind of ancient telescope or something.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is perfectly aligned with Sirius, suggesting a very deliberate connection to its energy.
Okay, so there's definitely a pattern emerging here. It's like Sirius is this cosmic thread that's woven throughout human history.
And it doesn't stop there. Even secret societies like the Freemasons and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, they use Sirius symbolism in their rituals and teachings.
Okay, so we're talking about a star that's been revered and studied for centuries and by different cultures all over the world. It makes you wonder what's so special about it. Could it be like a key to unlocking some ancient mysteries like the text suggests?
It's a question worth pondering for sure. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the power of the human mind. Consciousness plays a big role in this text as well.
Okay, bring on the brain power. What does the text have to say about consciousness?
Well, it challenges the idea that consciousness is just a byproduct of brain activity. It suggests that it's actually a fundamental force in the universe, something that can interact with and even shape the physical world.
So we're talking about mind over matter kind of stuff.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
And it uses the Hawaiian Kahuna tradition as an example to illustrate this concept.
Okay, I've heard of the Kahuna. They were like the spiritual leaders of ancient Hawaii, right?
Exactly. They had a deep connection to nature and were known for their, what we might call supernatural abilities.
Right, like controlling the weather and healing people with their minds.
Precisely. And the text explores the idea that these abilities might not be supernatural at all, but rather just untapped human potential. A different way of interacting with reality.
You like superpowers waiting to be unlocked. I'm all for that. But what did the Kahuna believe about consciousness and how it worked?
Well, they believed that there were three key elements to manifesting these magical abilities: concentrated thought, vital force, and a connection to what they called a subtle reality, a kind of deeper web of energy that connects everything in the universe.
So they believed that by tapping into this universal energy, we could actually influence the world around us. That's a pretty powerful idea.
Absolutely. And the text gives some pretty wild examples of the Kahuna putting this belief into practice. It describes them controlling weather patterns, walking on fire, and healing people instantaneously.
Okay, that sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel, but it's fascinating to think about the potential that might be hidden within us all.
Right. And what's even more interesting is that some modern scientific research is starting to support these seemingly magical abilities.
Really? Like what kind of research?
Well, there are studies on the placebo effect and the power of belief in healing that are showing that our minds can have a much greater impact on our physical reality than we previously thought. Maybe science is finally catching up to ancient wisdom.
I love it when that happens. It definitely makes you question what's possible. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already. From lost civilizations to O-parts to the power of consciousness. It's like we're piecing together a whole new understanding of human history.
And all of these ideas are connected by the central theme of the text: cyclical time and the rise and fall of civilizations.
Right, that idea that history repeats itself in these grand cycles. It's a concept that's found in many ancient cultures. And the Osirian theory suggests that this cyclical pattern is driven by fluctuations in human consciousness.
Exactly. The text uses the Hindu concept of the yugas to explain this idea. Imagine vast cycles of time, each representing a different stage of human consciousness and societal development.
Okay, so the yugas are like chapters in the story of humanity.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. Each yuga has its own unique characteristics, and they flow into one another in a continuous cycle.
So break it down for me. What are these yugas all about?
Well, you've got the Satya Yuga, which is like the Golden Age. It's a time of spiritual enlightenment and advanced civilization. Then there's the Treta Yuga, where things start to decline a bit, and then the Dwapara Yuga, where there's more materialism and conflict. And finally, you have the Kali Yuga.
The Kali Yuga, that sounds familiar. I've heard that term before. What's it all about?
The Kali Yuga is often described as the darkest age. It's characterized by all the things we see in the world today. Materialism, conflict, a decline in spiritual awareness.
So we're living in the Kali Yuga right now. That's kind of depressing.
Yeah, it can be a challenging time, but the text offers a glimmer of hope. It suggests that the yugas are cyclical, meaning that after the Kali Yuga, a new Satya Yuga, a new golden age will emerge.
So we're not just spiraling down into chaos. We're part of a larger cycle of rise and fall, death and rebirth.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always the potential for renewal and transformation.
That's actually quite comforting to know. Okay, so we're in the Kali Yuga now, but we're heading towards a new golden age. That's a much more optimistic outlook. I'm ready for more. What other mind-bending theories does this text have in store for us?
Well, let's see. Where do we go from here? There's so much to explore.
I'm all ears. I'm ready to dive deeper into the mysteries of the past and the possibilities of the future.
Well, the text kind of delves into how this cyclical pattern might not just apply to consciousness, but to actual physical geography, too.
Okay, so we're talking continents, shifting oceans, rising and falling.
Right. It suggests that, like ancient seafaring civilizations, those folks really knew their geography, maybe even better than we do today.
Okay, so I'm picturing like ancient mariners sailing across vast oceans with just the stars to guide them.
Yeah, and they were masters of it. The text specifically highlights Polynesian seafarers. They were able to traverse huge stretches of the Pacific using only stars, currents, and wave patterns.
Wow, that's impressive. But how does that connect to cyclical geography?
Well, get this. They developed these really intricate maps, and some of them actually show land masses that are now completely submerged.
So they were charting islands that no longer exist.
It seems that way. And these ancient maps suggest that those Polynesian navigators might have inherited knowledge from a civilization that existed way back when, before those land masses sank beneath the waves.
It's like they had a glimpse into a world that's lost to us now.
Right. It's like pieces of a huge puzzle scattered across the globe and throughout history. But it's not just about physical geography. The text also links this cyclical idea back to human consciousness.
Okay, so back to the mind. How so?
The text challenges the idea that consciousness is just a product of the brain. It suggests that it's a fundamental aspect of reality itself, something that can directly affect the physical world.
So mind over matter, is there like any scientific basis for this, or is it purely an ancient concept?
Well, it's interesting. The text points to the idea of a universal life force, which is sometimes called prana in yoga or chi in Chinese philosophy. And this concept is starting to resonate with some ideas in modern quantum physics.
So ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science aligning once again.
Yeah.
I love when that happens.
Me too. It's fascinating. But how did this ancient Osirian civilization fit into all of this?
Yeah, good question. Where do they come in?
Well, the text suggests that the Osirians were masters of manipulating this vital force. They understood how everything is interconnected, and they developed techniques to harness this energy.
So they weren't just technologically advanced, but also spiritually advanced?
Exactly. They had a deep spiritual foundation that informed their way of life. But here's the thing. Their civilization eventually collapsed.
Oh, no. Why? What happened?
It's like a cautionary tale,
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
The text suggests that they became victims of their own success. As they progressed, they lost touch with their spiritual roots. They became materialistic, complacent, and eventually it all fell apart, just like many civilizations before and after them.
It's a reminder that real progress isn't just about technology. It's about balance and staying connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. But even though the Osirians disappeared, the text says that their knowledge wasn't completely lost.
Oh, so where did it go?
It was preserved in ancient wisdom traditions, esoteric teachings, maybe even encoded in the fabric of reality itself.
Wow. So it's out there somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered.
Right, waiting for those who are open to exploring these deeper mysteries.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. But let's get back to the specifics. Earlier we were talking about cyclical time, And the text goes deeper into this with the Hindu idea of the yugas, right? Can you refresh my memory on what those are all about?
Sure. So the yugas are these vast cycles of time, each one representing a different stage of human consciousness and societal development. And right now we're in the Kali Yuga, which is often described as the darkest age.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that,
Yeah.
but it's not the end, right?
No, not at all. The text emphasizes that the Kali Yuga is just a phase. It's necessary for purification and transformation. It's not the end of the story.
So even in the midst of all the darkness, there's a seed of hope for a new beginning.
Absolutely. And the text says that the key to navigating the challenges of the Kali Yuga is to cultivate our own inner awareness, to reconnect with our true nature, and to understand our place in the cosmos. It's not about finding external solutions, but about shifting our consciousness.
So it's about looking inward, not outward.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful message, especially considering all the challenges we face in the world today.
I agree. It's like we're being called to step up and play an active role in shaping a better future.
And the text reminds us that we're not just passive observers in this process. We are active participants in the unfolding of consciousness. Our choices, our actions, our intentions all contribute to the collective shift that will usher in a new era.
So we have the power to influence the direction of humanity.
That's right. And speaking of influencing direction, let's get back to those ancient maps we were discussing earlier. What makes them so unique? Well, the text highlights some pretty interesting examples, like the Piri Reis map, a Turkish map from the 16th century.
Okay, and what's so special about that map?
It accurately depicts the coastline of South America and Antarctica. And get this, it was created centuries before those continents were officially discovered.
Wait, so they knew about land masses that were supposedly unknown at the time. How is that even possible?
That's the big question. It suggests that the people who made these maps had access to knowledge on technology that we didn't think existed back then. It makes you wonder if they had some kind of advanced way of surveying and mapping the world.
It's mind-boggling. And the Piri Reis map isn't the only one, right?
No, there are other ancient maps that show coastlines, mountain ranges, even river systems with incredible accuracy, even though they were supposedly unknown to the cultures that created them.
It's like they had a bird's-eye view of the Earth. It makes the idea of a lost advanced civilization even more plausible.
Right, and the text even proposes that some of these maps could be showing land masses that are now submerged.
So they're charting a world that no longer exists.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that idea of a global cataclysm that reshaped the Earth, submerging entire land masses and wiping out traces of a lost civilization.
Okay, my mind is officially blown again. But speaking of lost civilizations, we need to talk about ancient Egypt. The text connects Egypt to the Osirian civilization, suggesting that there's more to Egyptian history than meets the eye.
You see, the text focuses on the god Osiris, who's a central figure in Egyptian mythology.
Right, Osiris, the god of the underworld and rebirth.
That's the one.
Right.
But the text suggests that Osiris might not have just been a mythological figure, but a real historical person, maybe a king or a high priest, who ruled over a vast and advanced civilization.
So a real Assyrian civilization that predates the pharaohs. That's a bold claim. What kind of evidence supports that idea?
Well, the text points to the advanced spiritual understanding and the incredibly accurate astronomical knowledge that's embedded in Egyptian mythology and symbolism. Like, for example, it suggests that the pyramids weren't just tombs for pharaohs, but were actually designed as sophisticated energy devices.
So the pyramids were like ancient power plants.
Yeah. In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
The text proposes that they were built to harness cosmic energy. They were like giant antennas tuned into the subtle energies of the universe.
Okay, so we're back to ancient technology that we can barely comprehend.
Exactly. And the text suggests that the pyramids were used for all sorts of things. Heal, spiritual transformation, maybe even communication with other dimensions.
Wow. It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
Right. But if this Osirian civilization was so advanced, why did their knowledge disappear?
Yeah, where did it all go?
The text proposes that it wasn't completely lost, but was preserved in secret societies and esoteric traditions that had been passed down through the ages, influencing all sorts of spiritual and philosophical movements throughout history.
It's like a hidden stream of ancient wisdom flowing beneath the surface of history.
I like that analogy. And speaking of ancient wisdom, let's circle back to Sirius for a moment. You mentioned earlier that the Egyptians were really tuned into its cycles. What was so special about Sirius to them? Well, Sirius was known as Sokdet to the ancient Egyptians, and they observed that its annual rising always coincided with the flooding of the Nile River.
The Nile that was the lifeblood of their civilization, right?
Exactly. So they connected Sirius with a cycle of life and death, rebirth, and renewal. They saw it as a symbol of resurrection, which ties in with the myth of Osiris.
So another connection between Sirius and the Osirian civilization. It's all starting to come together. But let's move on to something else that really piqued my interest. The text mentions out-of-place artifacts, or O parts. Can you remind me what those are again?
Sure. So O-parts are objects that are found in archaeological contexts, but they seem way too advanced for the technology that supposedly existed at the time they were created. They challenge our current understanding of history and technology.
Right, like finding a smartphone buried with a Viking warrior.
Exactly. It just wouldn't make sense. What are some examples of O-parts that the text talks about?
Well, one of the most fascinating ones is the Antikythera mechanism.
Oh yeah, the Antikythera mechanism. It was found in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece.
And what is it exactly?
It's this device that dates back to the 2nd century BC, but it's so complex and sophisticated that it's been called an ancient computer.
An ancient computer? What did it do?
It was designed to track the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets. It could even predict eclipses with incredible accuracy.
Wow, that's amazing. It seems way ahead of its time.
Right, it's like finding a working iPhone in a medieval castle. It challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient Greek engineering.
Are there any other O parts mentioned in the text?
Yeah, there are a few others, like the Baghdad battery, which is a collection of clay pots and metal rods that some people think was an ancient battery. And then there's the Dorchester pot, which is a metal vase that was found embedded in solid rock that's estimated to be millions of years old.
Okay, a battery and a vase from millions of years ago. That's wild.
Yeah.
Do these objects actually prove that a lost advanced civilization existed, or could there be another explanation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The text doesn't give a definitive answer. It encourages us to consider all the possibilities, including independent invention, cultural diffusion, or even something more radical like extraterrestrial influence.
Extraterrestrials. Okay, now we're getting into some really interesting territory. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about something that seems to connect to O parts and everything else we've been discussing: human consciousness. The text dives into the idea that ancient civilizations had a much deeper understanding of consciousness and its potential than we do today.
Absolutely. They didn't see consciousness as just a byproduct of the brain, but as a fundamental force in shaping reality.
So they believed that our thoughts and intentions could actually influence the world around us.
Exactly. And this idea is actually starting to gain some traction in modern science, particularly in quantum physics. The idea that consciousness plays a role in the collapse of the wave function suggests that our minds might be much more intertwined with reality than we previously thought.
It's like ancient wisdom and modern science are meeting in this really fascinating way.
Right. But if consciousness is so powerful, how did we lose touch with this understanding?
Yeah, that's a good question. What happened?
The text suggests that as civilizations progressed, they started focusing more on the material world and less on the inner world of consciousness. We became obsessed with technology and external solutions, and we neglected the power of the mind.
So we traded wisdom for gadgets in a way.
You could say that. But the good news is that we can reclaim this understanding. It's not lost forever.
So how do we do that? How do we tap back into this power?
The text says that we need to cultivate our inner awareness, reconnect with our true nature, and explore the power of our own minds. It's not about going back in time. It's about moving forward with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe.
I like that. But it's not just about individual awakening, right? The text also talks about the cyclical nature of time and consciousness and how we're moving towards a new era of greater awareness.
Exactly. We're not just individuals on separate journeys. We're all part of a collective evolution of consciousness. As more people awaken to their true potential, it creates a ripple effect that influences all of humanity.
So it's like a critical mass of awakened consciousness that will eventually tip the scales and usher in a new era.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of cycles, let's go back to that idea of the precession of the equinoxes that we touched on earlier. The text mentions this astronomical phenomenon in connection with the yugas.
Right, the precession of the equinoxes. That's the slow wobble in the Earth's axis that takes about 26,000 years to complete a full cycle. It causes the stars to shift their position in the night sky.
Exactly. And the text suggests that the ancients were aware of this precession, and they saw it as a marker of the vast cycles of time represented by the yugas.
So they connected astronomical cycles with the evolution of consciousness. That's incredible.
It is. And the text says that we're currently transitioning out of the Kali Yuga and moving into a new era. And this transition coincides with the significant point in the precessional cycle where the Earth's axis is aligning with the galactic center.
So we're aligning with the heart of the Milky Way.
That's right. It's a time of great potential and transformation, but it could also be a time of challenges and upheaval.
It's like a cosmic reset button. It makes you wonder how this alignment will affect human consciousness and the course of history.
It's a reminder that we're not just living through linear time, but cyclical time. And as we move through these cycles, both individually and collectively, we have the opportunity to evolve and awaken to a greater understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Okay, I'm definitely feeling the cosmic vibes. But let's bring it back down to Earth for a moment and talk about one of the most tangible pieces of evidence for the existence of a lost, advanced civilization. Those ancient megalithic structures.
Right, those massive stone structures that are scattered all over the globe. What are some of the most compelling examples?
Well, the Great Pyramid of Giza is an obvious one. It's a colossal structure that still baffles researchers today. The text proposes that it wasn't just a tomb for a pharaoh, but a sophisticated energy device designed to harness cosmic energy.
Exactly. It's like a testament to the ingenuity and knowledge of a civilization that we're only beginning to understand.
And the Great Pyramid isn't the only example, right?
Of course not. There's Stonehenge in England, the Moai statues on Easter Island, the Sacsayhuaman complex in Peru.
What do all of these structures have in common?
They're all made from massive stones that were quarried, transported, and assembled with mind-blowing precision. And many of them were built using techniques that we still can't fully explain today.
So we're talking about a level of engineering and construction that just doesn't fit with our current understanding of ancient capabilities.
Exactly. And the text proposes that they might have been built by a lost civilization that had a very different understanding of engineering, astronomy, and energy manipulation.
It really makes you wonder if we've been underestimating the achievements of our ancestors.
And if this lost civilization did exist, where did they go? What happened to them?
Yeah, what's the story there?
Well, the text suggests that their knowledge wasn't completely erased, but was preserved in secret societies and esoteric traditions passed down through generations and influencing all sorts of spiritual and philosophical movements throughout history.
It's like a secret lineage of wisdom keepers entrusted with preserving this ancient knowledge.
And it makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden within these traditions just waiting to be rediscovered.
It's like a giant treasure hunt spanning centuries and continents.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring these ideas so exciting. We're peeling back layers of history, uncovering hidden connections, and challenging the conventional narratives.
All right, I'm ready to dive even deeper. What other mind-blowing theories does this text have in store for us?
Well, the text suggests that this, gradual shift that's caused by precession is connected to the rise and fall of civilizations, and that kind of mirrors the whole cyclical nature of the yugas.
So civilizations are rising and falling in sync with the stars.
That's what the text proposes. Yeah. And, it's a pretty wild thought.
It is. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about these big cosmic cycles, but what about something a little more relatable, something that affects us on a personal level? The text mentions ancient magical practices, stuff that we might consider supernatural or paranormal today. What's the text's take on all of that?
Well, it suggests that these abilities that we often call magic weren't seen as supernatural by ancient cultures. They were viewed as like a natural extension of human potential.
Yeah.
Something that was available to anyone who understood the subtle energies of the universe and knew how to work with them.
So like a hidden power that we all have. Okay, I'm listening. What kind of magical practices are we talking about specifically?
The text mentions things like telepathy, telekinesis, even the ability to control the elements.
Okay, now that's getting a little out there. I mean, is there any evidence to back these claims, or is it all just speculation?
Well, the text draws on accounts from various cultures, including the Hawaiian Kahuna, who are known for their strong connection to nature and their ability to do things that we might consider miracles today.
Like what kind of things?
They were said to be able to control the weather, heal the sick, and even see into the future.
Okay, so they were like real-life wizards or shamans.
Yeah, something like that. But if these abilities were real, how did we lose touch with them? Why aren't we all walking around bending spoons with our minds and making it rain? Well, the text suggests that as civilizations progressed, they became more fixated on the material world and lost touch with these subtle energies and the practices that allowed them to access them.
So we prioritize logic over intuition, external knowledge over inner wisdom.
Exactly. And in doing so, we kind of disconnected from our true potential.
Hmm.
But the text also suggests that this knowledge isn't lost forever.
Oh, so there's hope.
Yeah, definitely. It says that as we move into this new era of consciousness, we might rediscover those ancient practices and reclaim our innate abilities. It's not about going back in time, but about moving forward with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Okay, that's a really powerful message. But before we wrap things up, there's one thing that's been on my mind throughout this whole conversation. The text keeps mentioning the Osirian civilization, suggesting that it was this super advanced spiritual culture that predates ancient Egypt.
Hmm.
But if they were so advanced, why haven't we found more evidence of their existence? I mean, we've got pyramids and temples, but what about their technology, their cities, their writings?
That's a great question, and it's one that has puzzled researchers for a long time. The
Mm,
text offers a few possible explanations. One is that a lot of the evidence might be hidden under the ocean, lost to those cataclysmic events that changed the Earth's surface.
right, we talked about those submerged ruins earlier. It's like a whole chapter of human history is underwater.
Exactly. And the text also suggests that some of their knowledge might have been intentionally hidden or encoded in ways that we haven't figured out yet. It's like their wisdom was meant for a specific time and a specific group of people, maybe for a future, when humanity was more evolved and ready to handle it.
So it's like a cosmic time capsule waiting to be opened.
Exactly. And there's also the possibility that some of their technology was so advanced that it would seem like magic to us today. Imagine a civilization that could manipulate energy and matter at a subatomic level. Their technology would be indistinguishable from magic to our modern eyes.
That's some mind-blowing thought. It makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in history just waiting to be uncovered.
That's the beauty of exploration, isn't it? There's always something new to discover, something that challenges our understanding of the world.
I completely agree. Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. It's been an incredible journey, and I've learned so much about the past, but also about myself and the potential that we all have. If our listeners are intrigued by all of this, what are some resources they can check out to continue their own exploration?
Well, if you're fascinated by the cyclical nature of time and the concept of the yugas, I'd recommend looking into Hindu cosmology and exploring the works of scholars like Sri Yukteswar and Joseph Selby.
And for those who are interested in learning more about ancient magical practices and the power of consciousness, the books by Carlos Castaneda and Don Miguel Ruiz are great places to start.
Definitely. And you can always dive deeper into the world of oak parts and alternative archaeology by exploring the work of authors like Graham Hancock, Robert Bovell, and David Hatcher Childress.
There's a whole world of information out there for those who are willing to look for it.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a wrap. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I want to thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this adventure. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an open mind. The universe is full of mysteries, and the journey of discovery never really ends.